He fired me in front of the entire office for a mistake I didn't even make. Told me I'd never make it anywhere else. 1 year later, that same man sat across from me, begging for a job. Stick around, because the middle of this story gets a lot worse before it gets better, and the ending has a twist I promise you won't see coming. If you've ever been wronged by someone in power, stay with me till the end. Hit subscribe. You don't want to miss where this goes. My name's Colton. Colton Ashworth, 34 years old, logistics coordinator. Or, I was. I had a wife, Danielle, a 5-year-old daughter, Poppy, who drew me a picture every single morning before school. Nothing fancy, just a normal life, the kind you build slow, one paycheck at a time. I worked at a mid-sized freight and marketing firm in Columbus. 9 years there. 9 years of showing up early, staying late, covering shifts nobody else wanted. My boss was a man named Bradley Kessler, regional director, smooth talker, the kind of guy who shakes your hand a little too long in meetings so everyone remembers he did it. Here's the thing about Bradley, he wasn't always like that. Or maybe he was and I just didn't want to see it. Word around the office was that Bradley's father-in-law owned the company. Bradley married into the position, not earned it, and everyone knew that too. He was always performing, talking a little louder than he needed to in meetings, name-dropping numbers that weren't really his. A few months before everything fell apart, there were signs. His wife's cousin, a kid barely out of college, started showing up around the office, shadowing people. Nobody knew why yet. Bradley kept saying, he's just learning the ropes. I didn't think much of it at the time. Around that same period, I caught something real, a compliance error. Bradley rushed a shipment contract through without proper client sign-off. I flagged it, told him directly, face to face. I should have known right then. But I trusted the system. I trusted that hard work still meant something. I was wrong. And what happened next, I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. 3 weeks later, it blew up. The client pulled out, 6 figures. Gone. Just like that. Emergency meeting. Everyone crammed into that one glass conference room. Bradley stood up first, and he started talking about the timeline of the error, about who approved what, and somehow it was my name on every slide. He had an email thread, doctored, reworded, twisted just enough that it looked like I'd signed off on something I never touched. I remember standing up, my hands actually shaking. Wait, that's not what happened. Nobody looked at me. Bradley just looked around the room, calm as ever, and said, "We can't have this kind of mistake representing this company." Then he looked right at me. "You're done here, Colton. Clean out your desk." The whole floor just watched. Nobody defended me. Not one person. And then he added the line I still hear sometimes, late at night. "Guys like you get replaced. Remember that." Security walked me out like I was some kind of threat. 9 years, and they walked me out in front of everybody I'd ever helped. One coworker, Desmond from accounting, caught up to me by the elevator. Didn't say a word, just handed me a folder and shoved it into my bag before the doors closed. I wouldn't understand what was actually in that folder until months later. And when I did, it changed everything. I sat in my car for almost an hour after that. Didn't turn the key, just sat there. I didn't know how I was going to tell Danielle. I told her that night. Quiet, no yelling. She just looked at me for a long second. "What are we going to do, Colton?" I didn't have an answer. That was the worst part, not the anger. The silence after. But here's the thing about Danielle. She didn't stay quiet for long. 2 days later, she sat me down at that same kitchen table with a legal pad, and we made a list. Every contact I had, every company that might be hiring. She was the one who reminded me. A woman she knew from the pharmacy, a regular customer, worked in HR over at Halloran Freight Group, our old company's biggest competitor. She said, "Keep that name in your back pocket, just in case." I didn't think I'd need it that soon. The first month I was actually hopeful. Good resume, 9 years of experience, references lined up, 3 interviews that felt promising. All 3 went quiet after the final round. No callback, no explanation. I told myself it was just bad timing. Then a former coworker let it slip during a phone call. Said a hiring manager mentioned some concerning feedback from my last employer. That's when it hit me. Bradley was still giving references, and he wasn't giving good ones. I remember just sitting there with the phone in my hand, not even angry yet, just stunned. He'd already taken my job. Now he was making sure I couldn't get another one. Then the car started acting up. Transmission. Couldn't afford the repair, so I started driving rideshare at night just to cover groceries. Some nights I'd drive 12 hours and come home with less than $80 after gas. Danielle picked up extra shifts at the pharmacy. We stopped talking about when things get better. We just stopped talking about the future at all.
Poppy had a little school program around that time. Nothing big, just kids singing on a stage. I was supposed to be there, but I had a rideshare booked that I couldn't afford to cancel, a full night's pay riding on it. I missed it. Danielle recorded it on her phone and showed me later. Poppy scanning the crowd, looking for me. That's the night I finally understood what this whole thing had actually cost me. Not the job, not the money. Time. Time I wasn't getting back. Danielle found me sitting on the porch that night, staring at nothing. She didn't say much, just sat down next to me and said, "You are not the man he said you were in that meeting. Don't you dare start believing him." I didn't say anything back, but I heard her. A few nights later, I drove past my old building. Don't even know why. Sat outside in the car at 2 in the morning, staring up at the lights still on in Bradley's office, probably staying late to take credit for something else. I thought about all of it, the years, the late nights, the one meeting where I tried to do the right thing and got punished for it. And something shifted in me that night. The anger didn't go away, but it stopped being heavy. It turned into fuel. I still had no idea just how far that fuel would take me, or how it would find its way back to Bradley. The next morning, Danielle finally said the name out loud. "Call my friend at Halloran today, not next week." So I did. Around that same time, Desmond texted me too, said Halloran had an opening, said they were hungry to take business away from our old company. He also mentioned, quietly, that Bradley had been cutting corners for years, and that folder he'd handed me at the elevator was proof. Emails, timestamps, the kind of thing that could matter someday. I didn't plan revenge that night. I just planned to survive, but something told me this was the door. I took the job at Halloran. Entry level, lower pay than before. Didn't matter. I needed in. First 3 months were brutal in a different way. I was the new guy nobody trusted yet. Twice I got passed over for projects I knew I could handle because I hadn't proven myself there. I remember thinking, I already proved myself 9 years somewhere else, and look where that got me. But I kept showing up because what else was I going to do? Eventually, it clicked. I knew the industry. I knew where our old company was weak. Not secrets, not sabotage, just patterns, client pain points, places where service had been slipping for years. I used that knowledge the right way, helped win back a major account that had left our old company frustrated and unearned.
6 months in, promotion. Then another. Slowly, the bills stopped stacking. Danielle stopped picking up extra shifts.
Poppy started drawing pictures of Dad's new office instead of asking questions. I didn't miss another school program. Not one. Meanwhile, back at my old company, things were falling apart. That compliance issue Bradley buried resurfaced, bigger this time. An investigation. 2 major clients walked. Employees started leaving in waves. 1 year after I got walked out of that building, I got the title, Regional Director, same title Bradley once held over me. I thought that was the end of it. Turns out, the story wasn't done with Bradley yet. Or with me. HR sent me a stack of interview candidates for a director-level opening. I was scanning through resumes, and there it was. Bradley Kessler. Turns out, his old company let him go after the investigation went public. Nobody would touch his name in this industry, except maybe someone who didn't recognize it yet. He walked into that interview room still doing that same handshake a little too long thing. Then he looked up and saw me sitting behind the desk. His whole face changed. "Colton, I didn't know it was you." "Look, about what happened back then." I let him sit in that silence for a second, just like he let me sit in mine a year ago. Then, trying to explain himself, he said something he probably didn't mean to say out loud. He said the board had been pressuring him to make room for family, that his father-in-law told him someone had to go to open a spot for his wife's cousin, that it just happened to be me because my name was already on the compliance paperwork. Wait, that part I didn't know. The whole thing, the doctored emails, the public humiliation, the ruined references, none of it was really about a mistake at all. It was never about protecting the company. It was about making room for a relative who couldn't get a job anywhere else. And the investigation that eventually took Bradley down, it was that same cousin's decisions that triggered it. 18 months later in the same role they'd carved out by destroying mine. I got fired to make room for someone who ended up burning the whole place down anyway. I just sat there for a second, letting that settle. Then I said the only thing that felt true. "You told me guys like me get replaced. Looks like that applies to everyone, even the ones you make room for." He didn't say anything after that. What could he say? I didn't hire him. Not out of spite, just business. He wasn't the right fit. Funny how that phrase works both ways. He left the building the same way I did 1 year earlier. Quiet, alone, nobody walking him out this time. Just him and the weight of it. That night, I went home to Danielle and Poppy, sat down for dinner. Poppy showed me a new drawing, me standing in front of a big building, smiling. I told Danielle everything Bradley said. She just shook her head slowly and said, "You were never the mistake, Colton. You were just convenient." She'd known that all along, I think. I just needed to hear it out loud, from her, one more time. I used to think Bradley ended my career that day in that glass conference room. Turns out, he just ended his own, and he didn't even understand why until it was too late. I'm not angry anymore. I don't need to be. Every setback, every missed rent check, every night I sat outside that building at 2 a.m., it all led somewhere. Hard work outlasts cruelty, every single time. It just takes longer than you want it to. If this story hit you the way it hit me, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe, because Karma's next story might be even bigger than this one.